Picture this terrifying scenario. You retire to bed feeling completely normal, perhaps even satisfied after what you considered a healthy evening snack. Your blood pressure feels stable, your mind is clear, and you drift off to sleep without a care in the world. But somewhere between the hours of 3 and 5 a.m., while you're in your deepest sleep cycle, something catastrophic begins to unfold in your brain. By morning, your world has changed forever. You attempt to reach for your alarm clock, but your hand won't respond to your commands. You try to call out to your spouse, but the words that emerge from your mouth are garbled, incomprehensible sounds that bear no resemblance to what you intended to say. When your partner rushes to your side, their face, so familiar for decades, suddenly appears as a stranger's. You can see them, you know you should recognize them, but their name, their identity, everything that connects you to this person has vanished from your memory. This is the reality of a silent stroke that occurs during sleep. No chest pain, no dramatic collapse, no warning signs that Hollywood has taught us to expect. Just a quiet, devastating theft of your neurological function while you lay completely unaware. What caused this life-altering event? The answer might shock you. It wasn't the cigarettes you quit years ago, or the sugar you've been so careful to avoid, or even the stress you've been managing. Instead, it might have been that supposedly healthy snack you consumed just hours before bed, the exact same handful of nuts you've trusted and relied upon for years, perhaps even decades. As a neurologist who has spent over 2 decades studying brain health and stroke prevention, I've witnessed this heartbreaking scenario play out in emergency rooms and neurology wards far too often. The patterns I've observed continue to astound me, and the research I've conducted has revealed a disturbing truth. Consuming 5 specific types of common nuts at the wrong time of day can cause your blood to thicken dramatically, elevate your blood pressure to dangerous levels, and trigger a stroke while you sleep. This isn't an attempt to create panic or spread fear. It's a critical wake-up call based on solid medical evidence and years of clinical observation. Your next midnight snack, innocent as it may seem, could be the difference between waking up tomorrow morning with your faculties intact or beginning a long, difficult journey of stroke recovery. The hidden nighttime danger. Understanding your body's vulnerable hours. Most people live under the assumption that health management is primarily a daytime concern. We take our medications in the morning, exercise during daylight hours, and pay attention to our diet throughout our waking hours. However, what most people don't realize is that the greatest threat to our neurological health often strikes during the night, in those silent hours when we believe we're safest. Here's a medical reality that should concern every person over the age of 60. More than 1 in 4 seniors experience strokes during sleep. These aren't the dramatic, obvious strokes you see depicted in medical dramas. These are silent cerebrovascular events that occur without pain, without obvious symptoms, and without any warning that might wake you from your slumber. The medical term for this phenomenon is sleep-related stroke, and the statistics are both staggering and underreported. According to recent neurological research, approximately 28% of all strokes in people over 65 occur during sleep hours, typically between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. when the body's natural circadian rhythms create the perfect storm of vulnerability. But why does the body become so susceptible during these hours? The answer lies in understanding the complex physiological changes that occur as we age, combined with the natural fluctuations that happen during our sleep cycles. Even when you feel completely fine as you drift off to sleep, your blood pressure seems normal, your heart rate is steady, your breathing is regular, dangerous changes are already beginning to unfold beneath the surface of your consciousness. Your cardiovascular system enters a state that can best be described as organized chaos, where multiple factors converge to create conditions ripe for stroke. Your blood pressure, which should ideally drop during nighttime hours, instead begins to fluctuate unpredictably. This is partly due to your body's circadian rhythm, which naturally causes slight increases in blood pressure as night progresses. However, in older adults, this natural rhythm often becomes dysregulated, leading to sudden, dramatic spikes that can occur without any external trigger. Simultaneously, your blood begins to undergo significant changes in composition and flow characteristics. As you sleep, several factors combine to make your blood more viscous and prone to clotting. You move less during sleep, which reduces the natural circulation-promoting effects of muscle contraction. You consume less water during nighttime hours, leading to mild but significant dehydration. Your kidneys filter less efficiently during sleep, allowing certain substances to concentrate in your bloodstream. The result is blood that flows like thick syrup through arteries that have become increasingly rigid and unforgiving with age. Imagine trying to push honey through a series of old, brittle garden hoses that have been left outside through multiple harsh winters. The hoses have lost their flexibility, developed weak spots, and can no longer accommodate the pressure and flow they once handled easily. When you add increased pressure to this system, even a small increase, something inevitably gives way. This is where the seemingly innocent evening snack becomes a potential trigger for disaster. The wrong foods consumed at the wrong time can act as the final straw that pushes your cardiovascular system beyond its ability to cope, transforming your peaceful sleep into a medical emergency you won't even be aware of until it's too late. The 5 dangerous nuts. 1. Brazil nuts, the silent selenium overload, a toxic accumulation in disguise. Of all the nuts that masquerade as health foods while potentially harboring danger for seniors, Brazil nuts present perhaps the most insidious threat. These large, seemingly innocent nuts from the Amazon rainforest are so extraordinarily rich in nutrients that they cross the line from beneficial to potentially lethal, especially when consumed during the vulnerable evening hours. The primary culprit in Brazil nuts is selenium, a trace mineral that exemplifies the principle that the dose makes the poison. While selenium is indeed essential for human health, playing crucial roles in antioxidant function, thyroid hormone metabolism, and immune system support, the amount contained in Brazil nuts is so concentrated that it can quickly push your body into a state of selenium toxicity. To understand the scale of this problem, consider these stark numbers. The National Institutes of Health recommends that seniors consume no more than 55 micrograms of selenium per day. This recommendation isn't arbitrary. It's based on extensive research showing that levels above this threshold can begin to cause harmful effects, particularly in older adults whose bodies process and eliminate minerals less efficiently than younger individuals. Now here's the shocking reality. A single Brazil nut, just one, can contain anywhere from 68 to 91 micrograms of selenium, with some nuts containing as much as 200 micrograms. This means that consuming just one Brazil nut can push you to nearly 400% of your recommended daily intake. If you're like many health-conscious seniors who consume a small handful of these nuts as an evening snack, believing you're doing something beneficial for your body, you could be consuming over 1,000 micrograms of selenium in a single sitting, nearly 20 times the recommended daily amount. The problem becomes exponentially worse when you consider the timing of consumption. When you eat Brazil nuts just before bedtime, your body is transitioning into its nighttime metabolic state. During these hours, your liver's detoxification processes slow down significantly, your kidney function decreases, and your body's ability to eliminate excess minerals becomes severely compromised. Unlike water-soluble vitamins such as vitamin C, which your body can easily flush out through urine, selenium is fat-soluble and tends to accumulate in tissues, particularly in the liver, blood, and brain. This accumulation doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process that occurs over weeks and months of regular Brazil nut consumption. As selenium levels build up in your system, they begin to exert toxic effects on your cardiovascular system. One of the most dangerous of these effects is the way excess selenium affects your blood's clotting mechanisms. Selenium toxicity causes your platelets, the small blood cells responsible for forming clots when you're injured, to become abnormally sticky and hyperactive. Under normal circumstances, platelets circulate freely in your bloodstream, only clumping together when there's a genuine need to stop bleeding from an injury. However, when selenium levels become elevated, these platelets begin to aggregate inappropriately, forming microscopic clots even when there's no injury present. During the nighttime hours, when your blood flow naturally slows and becomes more sluggish, these hyperactive platelets create a perfect storm for stroke. Picture the traffic in your bloodstream during the early morning hours as similar to rush hour traffic in a major city. Now imagine that selenium has sent out a silent alarm, causing blood cells to suddenly slow down, cluster together, and form roadblocks throughout your circulatory system. These tiny clots don't necessarily cause immediate, obvious symptoms. Instead, they travel through your bloodstream like microscopic time bombs, seeking out the narrowest, most vulnerable vessels in your body. When one of these clots encounters a delicate artery in your brain, perhaps one already narrowed by years of age-related changes, it can completely block blood flow to a section of brain tissue, causing what neurologists call a silent stroke. The research supporting this connection is both extensive and alarming. A landmark study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2014 followed over 3,000 elderly adults for 5 years, tracking their selenium intake and cardiovascular outcomes. The researchers found a clear, dose-dependent relationship between selenium intake and stroke risk. Participants who regularly consumed high amounts of selenium had a 24% increased risk of stroke compared to those with moderate intake levels. The study was particularly revealing when it came to the timing of selenium consumption. Participants who consumed selenium-rich foods in the evening had significantly higher rates of early morning strokes compared to those who consumed the same foods earlier in the day. The researchers theorized that evening consumption, combined with the body's reduced nighttime detoxification capacity, created ideal conditions for selenium accumulation and subsequent cardiovascular events. But here's the hidden danger that makes this situation even more perilous. Many seniors are unknowingly consuming selenium from multiple sources. A significant percentage of older adults take daily multivitamins, many of which contain 55 to 70 micrograms of selenium. They may also consume selenium-rich foods like tuna, eggs, or sunflower seeds throughout the day. When they add Brazil nuts as what they believe is a healthy evening snack, they're creating a selenium overload that their aging bodies simply cannot handle. The symptoms of selenium toxicity are often subtle and easily attributed to other age-related changes. Fatigue, confusion, mild nausea, and changes in sleep patterns are commonly dismissed as normal parts of aging. Meanwhile, the real damage is occurring silently in the cardiovascular system, setting the stage for a potentially devastating stroke. For people over 60, particularly those taking blood-thinning medications like warfarin or aspirin, or those managing conditions like hypertension or diabetes, evening consumption of Brazil nuts represents an unrecognized but significant threat to brain health. The selenium overload can interfere with blood-thinning medications, making them either less effective or potentially dangerous, while simultaneously creating conditions that promote clot formation. The tragedy is that Brazil nuts, when consumed in appropriate amounts and at the right time of day, can actually be beneficial for health. Their high selenium content, when not excessive, supports immune function and may help protect against certain types of cancer. However, the margin between beneficial and harmful is extraordinarily narrow, and for seniors that margin becomes even narrower during the vulnerable nighttime hours. 2. Salted almonds, the pre-sleep sodium surge, a cardiovascular time bomb. Almonds, in their natural, unsalted state, are among the most celebrated nuts in nutritional science. They're naturally low in sugar, rich in heart-healthy monounsaturated fats, packed with magnesium for bone health, and loaded with vitamin E for antioxidant protection. Nutritionists and cardiologists routinely recommend them as part of a heart-healthy diet, and for good reason. Research consistently shows that regular almond consumption can help lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and support overall cardiovascular health. However, the moment these nutritional powerhouses are roasted in salt and consumed during the evening hours, they transform from a health-promoting snack into a potential cardiovascular threat, particularly for adults over the age of 60. This transformation occurs due to a combination of factors related to sodium content, timing of consumption, and the aging body's reduced ability to handle sodium loads. To understand the magnitude of this problem, let's examine the numbers in detail. A modest handful of salted almonds, approximately 20 to 24 individual nuts, which is what most people consider a reasonable snack portion, contains between 200 and 250 milligrams of sodium. For comparison, this represents more than 20% of the total daily sodium intake recommended by the American Heart Association for older adults. The American Heart Association's guidelines are not arbitrary suggestions. They're based on decades of research showing that sodium intake directly correlates with blood pressure levels, particularly in older adults. For seniors, the recommended daily sodium limit is 1,500 milligrams, with an ideal target of 1,000 milligrams for those already dealing with hypertension or heart disease. This means that a single evening snack of salted almonds can account for nearly a quarter of an entire day's sodium allowance. But the problem extends far beyond simple sodium accounting. The timing of sodium consumption plays a crucial role in how it affects your cardiovascular system, and evening consumption presents unique dangers that many people, including some healthcare providers, don't fully appreciate. When you consume salty foods during the day, your body has multiple mechanisms to handle the sodium load. Your kidneys work at peak efficiency, your blood vessels are more flexible and responsive, and your overall metabolic rate is higher, allowing for better processing and elimination of excess sodium. Additionally, daytime physical activity helps promote circulation and can help offset some of the blood pressure-raising effects of sodium consumption. However, when you consume significant amounts of sodium in the evening, particularly within 3 hours of bedtime, you're essentially overwhelming your body's sodium handling capacity at precisely the time when these systems are least equipped to cope. During nighttime hours, kidney function naturally decreases by 20 to 30%, meaning that sodium clearance becomes significantly less efficient. Your blood vessels, already stiffer and less responsive due to age-related changes, become even more rigid during sleep. The physiological mechanism behind this danger involves what cardiologists call volume expansion. When you consume salty foods, your body naturally retains additional water to maintain the proper sodium-to-water ratio in your bloodstream. In younger, healthier individuals, this volume expansion is temporary and easily managed by the cardiovascular system. However, in adults over 60, whose arteries have lost much of their natural elasticity and whose heart function may be subtly compromised, this sudden increase in blood volume can create dangerous pressure spikes. These pressure spikes don't occur immediately after eating the salty snack. Instead, they typically manifest between 3 and 5 a.m., during what sleep researchers call the vulnerable window. This timing coincides with natural circadian rhythm changes that already cause slight increases in blood pressure, creating a compounding effect that can push blood pressure to dangerous levels. The insidious nature of this problem is that you won't feel these blood pressure spikes occurring. Unlike daytime hypertension, which might cause noticeable symptoms like headaches or dizziness, nighttime blood pressure elevation occurs while you're unconscious, unaware that your cardiovascular system is under extreme stress. During these early morning hours, your brain is particularly vulnerable. Brain tissue requires a constant, steady supply of oxygen-rich blood to function properly. When blood pressure spikes occur in arteries that are already narrowed or damaged by years of age-related changes, the result can be catastrophic. Small blood vessels in the brain can rupture under the pressure, causing hemorrhagic strokes. Alternatively, the pressure changes can dislodge small pieces of plaque from artery walls, creating clots that can block blood flow to crucial brain regions. Research published in the Journal of Hypertension followed over 2,500 seniors for 7 years, tracking their evening sodium intake and cardiovascular outcomes. The study found that participants who regularly consumed high-sodium snacks within 3 hours of bedtime had a 31% higher rate of early morning strokes compared to those who avoided evening sodium intake. More alarming still, the study found that this increased risk persisted even among participants who maintained normal daytime blood pressure levels. The addictive nature of salted almonds compounds this problem significantly. The combination of salt, fat, and crunchiness activates reward pathways in the brain, making it extremely difficult to stop at just one handful. Food scientists have extensively studied this phenomenon, and they've found that salted nuts are among the most difficult snack foods to consume in moderation. The typical pattern involves eating one handful, then just a few more, then finishing the entire container without realizing how much has been consumed. This mindless consumption can easily result in sodium intake exceeding 500 to 700 milligrams from a single evening snacking session. Nearly half of the recommended daily intake consumed in just a few minutes before bed. For seniors taking blood pressure medications, this sodium surge can overwhelm the medication's effectiveness, essentially creating a window of vulnerability where their blood pressure control fails precisely when they need it most. The interaction between evening sodium consumption and blood pressure medications presents another layer of complexity. Many blood pressure medications are designed to provide 24-hour coverage, but their effectiveness can be significantly reduced by sudden sodium surges. ACE inhibitors, diuretics, and calcium channel blockers all work through mechanisms that can be overwhelmed by excessive sodium intake, particularly when that intake occurs during the evening hours when the medication's effectiveness may already be at its lowest point. For seniors experiencing lower leg swelling, a common sign of fluid retention, evening consumption of salted almonds can exacerbate this condition dramatically. The additional sodium causes further fluid retention, increasing the workload on an already stressed cardiovascular system and creating additional risks for both heart failure and stroke. The solution isn't to eliminate almonds entirely. Their nutritional benefits are too significant to ignore. Instead, the key is choosing plain, raw almonds and consuming them earlier in the day when your body is better equipped to handle any mineral content. Soaking raw almonds for 6 to 8 hours before consumption can actually enhance their nutritional profile while making them easier to digest, providing all the cardiovascular benefits without the sodium-related risks. Additionally, timing almond consumption to coincide with adequate water intake can help support proper hydration and electrolyte balance, maximizing the nut's benefits while minimizing potential harm. The goal is to work with your body's natural rhythms rather than against them, providing nutrition when your system can best utilize it while avoiding potential triggers during vulnerable periods. 3. Cashews, the oxalate-burdened microscopic crystals that cut like glass. Cashews possess an almost irresistible appeal for many seniors. Their creamy, buttery texture and mild, sweet flavor make them seem like nature's comfort food, a healthier alternative to processed snacks that provides both satisfaction and nutrition. From a superficial nutritional standpoint, cashews appear to be an excellent choice. They're rich in healthy monounsaturated fats, provide essential minerals like copper and magnesium, and contain beneficial plant compounds that support heart health. However, beneath this appealing exterior lies a potentially serious threat that becomes increasingly dangerous with age: an exceptionally high concentration of oxalates, naturally occurring compounds that can wreak havoc on the aging cardiovascular system when consumed during vulnerable evening hours. Oxalates are found throughout the plant kingdom, serving as a natural defense mechanism that plants use to protect themselves from being eaten. In small amounts, oxalates are generally harmless and are routinely consumed in many healthy foods like spinach, beets, and tea. However, cashews contain one of the highest concentrations of oxalates found in any commonly consumed nut, with levels that can range from 49 to 137 milligrams per ounce, depending on growing conditions and processing methods. For younger adults with fully functioning kidneys and robust metabolic systems, these oxalate levels typically don't pose significant problems. The body's natural detoxification processes can handle moderate oxalate loads, breaking them down and eliminating them through normal kidney function. However, after age 60, several critical changes occur that transform oxalates from a manageable dietary component into a potential cardiovascular threat. First and most importantly, kidney function naturally declines with age. By age 65, the average person has lost approximately 30 to 40% of their kidney function compared to their peak levels in their 20s and 30s. This decline in kidney function means that oxalates are no longer efficiently filtered from the bloodstream and eliminated through urine. Instead, they begin to accumulate in the blood and tissues, reaching concentrations that can cause significant physiological problems. Second, the aging process affects the body's ability to produce and maintain adequate levels of certain enzymes and cofactors that are essential for oxalate metabolism. Specifically, older adults often have reduced levels of thiamine, vitamin B1, pyridoxine, vitamin B6, and magnesium, all of which play crucial roles in breaking down oxalates and preventing their accumulation. When oxalates accumulate in the bloodstream of older adults, they don't simply circulate harmlessly. Instead, they actively seek out calcium ions, which are always present in the blood, and form calcium oxalate crystals. These crystals are microscopic in size but incredibly sharp and abrasive, essentially forming tiny shards of glass-like material that circulate through the cardiovascular system. The formation of these crystals is particularly problematic during nighttime hours when blood flow naturally slows and becomes more sluggish. During these periods, calcium oxalate crystals have more opportunity to come into contact with blood vessel walls, where they embed themselves and cause microscopic injuries. Picture thousands of tiny glass shards scraping against the inner lining of your arteries and veins, creating small cuts and abrasions that trigger inflammatory responses. This inflammatory cascade has several dangerous consequences for cardiovascular health. First, the microscopic injuries caused by oxalate crystals create rough, damaged areas on blood vessel walls. These damaged areas become collection points for cholesterol, cellular debris, and other substances that contribute to plaque formation. Over time, this leads to progressive narrowing of arteries, a condition known as atherosclerosis. Second, the inflammatory response triggered by oxalate crystal damage causes blood vessel walls to become thicker and less flexible. This loss of arterial elasticity is particularly dangerous for older adults, whose arteries have already lost much of their natural flexibility due to age-related changes. The combination of age-related stiffening and oxalate-induced inflammation creates arteries that are unable to accommodate normal fluctuations in blood pressure. Third, and perhaps most dangerously, the presence of calcium oxalate crystals in the bloodstream affects the normal clotting mechanisms of blood. The sharp edges of these crystals can trigger inappropriate activation of platelets, causing them to clump together and form clots even when there's no injury that requires clotting. This hypercoagulable state is particularly dangerous during sleep when blood flow is already reduced and the risk of clot formation is naturally elevated. Research conducted at Johns Hopkins University followed 1,200 adults over age 65 for a period of 8 years, tracking their dietary oxalate intake and cardiovascular outcomes. The study found a clear correlation between high oxalate consumption and increased rates of both ischemic and hemorrhagic strokes. Participants who regularly consumed high oxalate foods in the evening had a 22% higher rate of stroke compared to those who consumed the same foods earlier in the day or avoided them entirely. The study was particularly revealing when it examined the subset of participants who had existing kidney problems or were taking medications that affected calcium metabolism. In this group, the correlation between evening oxalate consumption and stroke risk was even more pronounced, with a 34% increased risk compared to controls. For seniors who are already managing conditions like chronic kidney disease, diabetes, or heart disease, the consumption of high oxalate foods like cashews during evening hours can create a perfect storm of cardiovascular risk factors. These individuals often have compromised kidney function, making them less able to eliminate oxalates effectively. They may also be taking medications like calcium channel blockers or diuretics that can interfere with normal calcium metabolism, potentially increasing the formation of calcium oxalate crystals. The timing of cashew consumption is particularly critical because of how the body's metabolism changes during sleep. During daytime hours, physical activity, adequate hydration, and optimal kidney function work together to help process and eliminate oxalates before they can accumulate to dangerous levels. However, during nighttime hours, all of these protective mechanisms are reduced, creating ideal conditions for oxalate crystal formation and accumulation. The deceptive nature of cashews makes this problem even more dangerous. Unlike some nuts that have strong, distinctive flavors that might limit consumption, cashews are mild and creamy, making them easy to overconsume. A typical handful of cashews can easily contain 15 to 20 individual nuts, providing oxalate levels that exceed safe limits for older adults, particularly when consumed during evening hours. Moreover, cashews are often consumed as part of mixed nuts or trail mixes, where their oxalate content combines with sodium from salted varieties and other potentially problematic compounds from different nuts, creating a synergistic effect that multiplies the cardiovascular risks. The gradual nature of oxalate-related cardiovascular damage means that symptoms may not appear until significant harm has already occurred. Early signs might include unexplained fatigue, mild cognitive changes, or subtle balance problems, symptoms that are often attributed to normal aging rather than recognized as indicators of oxalate-related vascular damage. For seniors who enjoy nuts as part of their diet, the solution isn't necessarily complete avoidance but rather strategic substitution and timing. Lower oxalate alternatives like macadamia nuts, pecans, or pumpkin seeds can provide similar nutritional benefits without the oxalate burden. When cashews are consumed, they should be limited to small amounts earlier in the day, accompanied by adequate water intake to support kidney function and oxalate elimination. 4. Sunflower seeds, the invisible hemorrhage risk. Sunflower seeds look harmless, tiny, crunchy, and nutritious. But for those over 60, they hide a dangerous trio: excessive omega-6 fats, high sodium, and mindless snacking potential. First, they're often heavily salted. A handful can outsalt a bag of chips. Being small and addictive, it's easy to consume 3 to 4 servings without realizing it, especially while watching television. Second, sunflower seeds are loaded with omega-6 fatty acids. While not inherently harmful, modern diets already contain excessive omega-6, contributing to inflammation, particularly in fragile, aging blood vessels. Third, most are roasted in cheap industrial oils, increasing oxidative stress and compounding damage, especially during nighttime hours when blood pressure fluctuates more and arteries stiffen with age. Imagine brain capillaries as thin glass tubes. When inflamed and stressed, even small pressure spikes can cause them to shatter, resulting in silent brain bleeds that cause no pain but gradually deteriorate memory, balance, or speech. Even nutritious seeds can quietly endanger your sleeping brain, especially with a history of hemorrhagic stroke or high blood pressure. Instead, try unsalted pumpkin seeds or soaked chia seeds consumed during daylight hours. Sometimes the smallest seeds leave the deepest scars. 5. Walnuts, brain fuel at the wrong hour. Walnuts are true brain food, packed with omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatory compounds that support memory and defend against cognitive decline. However, after age 60, timing becomes crucial. When consumed in the morning, walnuts enhance focus and heart health. But eaten in the evening, they may subtly undermine your brain. Here's why: fat digestion takes time. Consuming walnuts late in the day diverts blood to your stomach, drawing it away from your brain precisely when it needs full support for overnight repair. Additionally, fat digestion increases cortisol, your stress hormone, disrupting deep sleep necessary for memory consolidation and nighttime blood pressure regulation, both already fragile in older adults. Think of walnuts as thoughtful guests, wonderful during the day but too demanding for midnight visits. They require blood and energy, resources your brain needs to rest and heal. Poor sleep isn't just tiring, it's linked to stroke, cognitive decline, and immune function deterioration. A healthy snack at the wrong time becomes a hidden disruption. The solution: consume walnuts earlier in the day when digestion peaks and your brain is better prepared to reap their benefits. The right food at the wrong time becomes the wrong food. We've reached the end of this video. Remember to like and subscribe and stay safe.